Hey guys, so this is a video that will be talking about the end of Revelations Nevada. I will be spending some time talking about my own experiences as being this the first game I have ever DM'd as somebody who's ever played like one D&D game before this one, as well as like making the first game I ever been a DM for be a actual play show, which was really interesting. I do have some thoughts about that, but before we get to that, I would like to put a big highlight onto the players. We'll be talking about each of the characters from Revelations Nevada, Richard, Drake, and Jack, and going into what the direction their story was heading to, as well as just my own plans as the GM and what the players were hoping we would get to with their story, and maybe some other fun things. And as always, if you want to find them on social media, I will be linking that down below, but they also do mention it in the video. So if you really enjoy my players and want to see what other stuff they do, you will find that all out. And anyway, enough about that. Let's get to our very first interview. Hey, I am here with who is this guy?
Yes, My name's John, also known as Animated Zombie. I played Richard.
Richard. Yay.
Yeah.
So, it has been a while since we've last played. You want to talk about anything you've been up to since then?
Well, lately I've mostly been doing a lot of art fight. I've been constantly telling myself I'm going to start DMing for a game, but I keep putting it off because work's been happening.
I feel that I've been wanting to be playing D&D, but school has been kept me away from D&D.
Yeah, no, once I'm actually able to finally finish that, reading that module, I'll probably try to see if I can invite you to the game.
Yes, I would love to play more D&D. Yeah.
Yes, yes, good.
Yes. Yes. I've been wanting to be in the game forever.
Yeah,
Though I've gotten into like the occasional one shot here and there.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Revelations Nevada. Richard.
Yep.
He's he's very we definitely you and I had plans for him for at least like with the so for people who don't remember who haven't listened, the end of the current arc, Richard is on some hot water with his boss, does not get along with him. I'm pretty sure you like what was the last thing that Richard said to Dunnigan?
Oh man, I don't even remember. It's been like because thanks to COVID, we lost so much chance of time because we would record in the same room all the time.
Yeah, we were recording in the same room. I would edit it and I would have like that like we would stream episodes on TikTok, and then I would have that episode edited by the week we were gonna record another stream on TikTok. So,
Yeah,
and then COVID just
it,
completely ruined that.
it really did. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, which is
Like
which is really unfortunate.
we tried the whole separate recording in different rooms, but our schedules just wouldn't line up because the fact is we were so used to setting things up physically, but after the pandemic, it just threw everyone's schedules off.
Well, it's also very easy because we always like every week would set one day aside for all of us to like meet up and hang out. And especially like
Yeah,
now it's harder because with the exception of like me and Jason, all of us live in like completely different towns now.
yeah. I mean, I don't live too far away, but it's at least a half-hour drive for me, which isn't that bad. But
No, no, I live like smack dab in the middle, so like the amount of time for me to get to where you live is about the same amount of time it is for me to get where Joe lives.
yeah,
Yeah, so you guys gonna have to like gravitate towards me.
yeah, which we Yeah, no, if we had a spot where we could meet, that wouldn't be a problem. Who knows? But
Yeah, I mean, though,
fortunately,
since then I have gotten better with like audio stuff, so like like editing the audio together wouldn't be an issue for me if we have to record on separate channels. It's just the timing at this point.
yeah, no, and also the fact is like again, it's been like what 2, 3 years since we last attempted a recording.
Yeah, like at this point it's just like too much time has passed. A lot of like, personal stuff with like people getting new jobs and people moving to new places, some of us going back to school. It definitely puts a and me, at least me personally, doing 50 million like art related projects definitely has put like a damper on my time.
You know, it's one of those unfortunate things that happens with a lot of campaigns. Let's be real.
Yeah, but I mean, like at least for me, just because like we had like our like short sit down of like talking in about the stuff that like I had in mind for everybody's characters, though we didn't really get into mostly just like the some of the big major plot points. If
Yeah.
we wanted to talk a bit about those. So like I know this was something you and I already knew beforehand, but you had said that you wanted Richard to not be a cop anymore when we were in the middle
Yeah.
of the current arc.
Yeah, no, I was like kind of I mostly made him a cop as just the idea of like it explains how he could like would get caught up in the supernatural situations and why he would be invested in trying to like solve it.
That makes
And
sense.
just kind of just growing to realize he doesn't really need to be a cop to do that. And also with everything that happened in 2020, it's like, yeah, no, this feels like a good time to at least redirect his character.
Yeah, I think so. And like I think the one little thing with it is he's a small town cop. He's not like a big city cop. And
Well,
I like the direction we were going of like kicking him out of the force, especially since like I made Dunnigan to be like an absolute asshole. Um,
yeah.
but
Well, like he was a city cop that went to a small town, most just because he was kind of bullied out of the city cop life.
yeah, yeah, no, that's fair. That's completely fair. So
Which
one,
I was about to say, like, given what we know, that we know a lot more about, well, it's like we've studied a lot more about policing. It's just like, yeah, kind of a more common thing to happen than what I expected.
yeah, I one of the things actually I wanted to ask you a question of, which is because so you and I had already planned previously at the end of Richard's second arc for him to get fired from the police force. So now my question for you is, what would have like when Richard got fired, like what would he have thought of doing after that? Like at least career
Oh man,
wise, or if he wanted to like have his midlife crisis then and there.
he probably would have had his midlife crisis. Like he got into like being a cop mostly because the fact is like he didn't feel like his major was going anywhere properly and wanted to support his wife who was going to have like like go into what he thought was a lot more respectable career with like STEM and sciences, being like an astrophysicist.
So
And was like,
Richard
all
wanted to be a
right,
good husband.
yeah, oh no, no, completely a wife guy. Like, like downplays it a lot, but like genuinely just like I am here to support my wife. I mean, it's so long
Rich,
since I've done the voice. I'm trying to remember if I'm doing it correctly.
he's one of those guys where if you get him started talking about his wife at work, he just rips open his shirt and he's wearing another shirt underneath it that says "I love my wife."
Admittedly, during the honeymoon phase, he was like that, and when he was in Vegas, he was very much like that. When they moved, his wife probably told him to tone it down.
Gwen just had to be like, "Okay, honey, since we're in a new town, maybe tone it down with the wife guy, I think." I love Gwen. She was a lot of fun. A lot of fun for
Yeah,
coming up stuff with John.
yeah, it's just because I think we basically just want to say anything goes.
Oh yeah, anything goes. She's definitely like a character who I had actually very early on the development I wanted with her specifically with so one of the things, so the whole, every it's the big thing with the with this campaign was like all the main monsters were based off of like the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Like the first one you guys faced was death. The second one was
Yes, the
uh
one where we blew up that gas station to kill.
yeah, the first one's name was Tempest. He was the horseman of death. The next one was based off of famine, where things getting into food started causing things to disappear horrifically.
You know, I,
And
I always pictured it as like basically just like a time lapse of like flies eating an apple.
yeah, I personally kind of like imagined it being like minuscule bugs. Like those little red dot red I don't know what they're called. They're like teeny tiny little red dot bugs.
Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of imagine something like that, but like silvery or just like even harder to see than those like bright red little bugs.
yeah,
Yeah, just something like that that just like rapidly eats through a bunch of things and then they die.
yeah.
Like cicadas. Except instead of going around and making more cicadas, they just eat stuff and die.
I think that's locusts, not cicada. I mean, cicadas do probably eat a lot, but like I think it's locusts that are more associated with that.
I didn't even know that's a thing that's associated with locusts.
Yeah, no, like they're famously plague creatures. Like
Yeah, no,
they're one of the plagues of Egypt.
well, thank goodness my pestilence monster wasn't going to be based off that then. Otherwise, that would have just
Was it
been
going to be
really.
based on frogs flying from the sky, falling from the sky? Because that's another one.
The pestilence one, my plan for that one was I was gonna go more in like not too much into like it was kind of supposed to be like not exactly a mental health thing, but kind of like a like internal monologue kind of thing of specifically just like your like worst intrusive thoughts. Um,
Oh no.
kind of like that, but like it was supposed to like manipulate people to the point where they actually act them out. So like my very like how I do like at the beginning of arcs, it was they have like a little like story that kind of like describes the like
Yeah,
tone
like that.
and the
Basically, like
monster
the
for that
first
arc.
attack, so to speak.
Yeah, the first attack. I was gonna actually start the arc after the current one that we were on with Dunnigan, and the monster specifically targeting Dunnigan. I wasn't gonna
Huh.
make it lead off into anything that let's just say would have been too like this day personal. Definitely not something like horrible, relatable, but mostly just like with him is that he's just like he doesn't like Richard.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure we've well established that. Actually, like we should sort like. Admittedly, the other thing I was probably going to debate on, like Richard probably doing after leaving the Force.
Yeah.
I was like thinking that he would probably end up like hopping around jobs for a little while before eventually just like probably end up like in order to help keep him dealing with the like having an excuse to be nosy to help deal with the whole thing of like hunting down apocalyptic beasts.
You
Either
know,
like oh,
I was gonna say
sorry,
because
first.
I was gonna say if we had gotten to the point where we got into that part, and if that's something you would have decided to do with Richard, then I think Richard should have talked more with Mercedes.
Actually, that's what I was planning on doing. Basically, just try to have him get into like private investigation.
Oh, that'd be really cool. That'd be really interesting too.
Either private investigation or like neighborhood safety.
Yeah, yeah.
Whichever one ends up happening. Whichever one ended up happening.
And one of my that actually would have been like a lot of fun to do, especially when we got to the last of like the main four horsemen. Because originally So arcs 2, 3, and 4 are supposed to be themed around each one of the players, with arc 1 obviously being the like introduction, getting used to the world and how it works kind of deal. And
Yeah.
the last one was going to be Drake's, because the current one's focused on Jack, and then yours was going to be the third one. And that would have been like really interesting to have Richard be in that position for Drake's, because I'm going to talk more about Drake's stuff with Joe, but the fourth arc was supposed to be like Drake's past coming to haunt him and bringing back characters such as the member of the family he made that original deal with, and people from his past, and how he decides to deal with that. And then that
Yeah.
was going to lead into the last arc, which is the Antichrist, which my big reveal for that arc, if you remember me telling you about it a while ago, is that the Antichrist was supposed to be Gwen.
Yeah, no, that just what like I was just going like, Daryl, have you been watching Good Omens?
I have not been watching Good Omens. I was not based off this. So I had this idea, like when I first had the idea with this and making it like Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse themed, and I was like, oh crap, like there's gonna be some kind of like, if I'm gonna do something with the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, I gotta do something with like an Antichrist figure. And this was like way before Good Omens. This was even before I got into like horror podcasts in general. Um,
Well, I think we should specify more before the Good Omens show came out. The book's been out since the '90s, but like
but
neither of
yeah,
us
the
was
show.
into like I wasn't like just getting into Terry Pratchett at the time.
I didn't watch the Good Omens show until like last year.
Fair
So,
enough.
yeah, so this was like, it was like during 2019 when I was like, hey, let's make a horror, like a monster of the week game for YouTube, because we were like so desperate to play D&D at the time. And um I had the idea for it. I think it was when we were leaving your house and Joe was taking me home, and I was in his car and we were talking, and I had the idea for it, and I was like, "Oh, I know what I'm gonna do." And Joe was like, "With what?" And I was like, "I can't tell you, but I know."
Yeah.
And
Like
yeah,
didn't we originally decide we were like doing the recording? Like I think we were mostly decided to do the recordings just because Fetch is like it would be nice to have like a easy to have backlog, so that way note taking is in a way bizarrely easier.
that, and I think it was also because I had just finished re-listening to all of the Adventure Zone, which, because at the time the only podcasts I listened to were the Adventure Zone and the SCP archives, and I wasn't really into like listening to any other shows. And I listened to Amnesty the first time, which is what made me want to play Monster of the Week. But me and Joe were talking, and we were like, it'd be really fun to like do our own actual play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a conversation that has been had by every D&D group.
I mean, like I wasn't gonna, I wouldn't want to do something that's like the Adventure Zone with like,
Oh no,
how
I'm not trying to be.
they're on
I'm
like
not trying to be
season
dismissive.
6 now.
I'm not trying to be dismissive. It's more like I'm making a joke about the fact it's like this is a commonplace thing.
Yeah, but we thought
It's a universal experience.
yeah, and Monster of the Week is like the best game to, if you wanted to do like a something that's like a campaign, but nothing that's like, critical role length in campaign. Monster of the Week is like one of the best systems to deal it with, specifically because it is built to be like in like a certain number of acts.
Yeah,
I think it's like 5 acts in total, maybe 6. I'll have to look at the book again. So you got like, and like they do it with like different phases of like the day. So
yeah,
I think that like if you wanted to do like a short, D&D thing, unless you're doing like a short one shot in like another system, then Monster of the Week is like one of the nicer ones where it's like I want to do a short game, but nothing that's like way too short.
yeah.
And that's
I know,
the
like,
thing.
yeah, because like I know there was one system I've been keeping my eye on, which is like Panic at the Dojo,
Yeah.
because that's actually trying its best to mimic fighting games. So it's like very good for like short one shots where you just want to focus on combat. And it's just like this seems fun to do.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to run the Guardians module from McGuffin and Co.'s Odd Jobs module book, because ever since I got that book, I've been talking about doing a game with that module specifically, where everybody's playing as clerics and paladins.
Are they called the Amen?
I mean, that's like if what you guys want to call yourself is fine, but the whole story for the module is you're a group of nuns who have been summoned in like 1970s a 1970s church in France to guard the portal to hell, and supernatural shit starts happening. And depending on like your choices, it could lead to different endings for the module. But I just thought it'd be really funny if you converted that to 1970s, but it's also D&D. So there's like Dragonborn and elves and shit, and everybody's playing as clerics and paladins. And I did try to
Is that
run it with a group when I was at Savannah, and we did the first session of it. It was a lot of fun. Like one of my players was literally just playing Walter White, and the storyline with like your characters is that all of you had done something bad enough to get yourselves kicked out of your own covens. So there's like a whole system for like the bad thing you did, and this character, for example, had was cooking meth in the basement.
Jesus?
Yeah, he was playing Walter White.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. My
Yeah.
brain immediately goes to selling sin insurance.
Oh man, Martin Luther is knocking at your door right now.
Exactly.
um, but yeah, that's just kind of like what I've been wanting to do with that game, and I just miss playing D&D.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Like again, if I'm able to like DM, I'll let you know.
Yeah, whenever you can. I
Yeah.
just like my only current issue with me personally being able to do games is they have to be either like once a month games or one shots, because I am going to be in my final year of college. I am going to be so busy with my final film.
Understandable. Like I probably want to aim for like once a month. Admittedly, like try to do like just one long game a month.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like I would probably be recording it, not like to post, but just at least like be able to easily keep notes.
Honestly, I wouldn't personally have an issue with that if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, no, like it, like I wouldn't post it unless like I'd ask everyone after the whole campaign was done if we wanted to post it. It was otherwise, yeah,
I mean, I would ask beforehand if people wanted you to record them before recording them.
oh no, that's obvious. That's obvious.
Yeah,
Like I
okay.
didn't think that needed to go without saying, but like then again, we are being recorded right now, so it is probably good to at least like say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I asked you to do the recording thing with me, so
Yeah, yeah, of course.
yeah. So like now that like we were like talking about like my plans for Richard at least, well actually I didn't even finish the stuff with Gwen. But
Oh man, we keep getting sidetracked.
I mean, it's fine. That kind of dwelled into like something I was going to ask about later with like your like future D&D plans. But with Gwen, like she was supposed to be the Antichrist, but like you know how if the whole family doesn't work on their miracles together, they end up flawed in some kind of way. And I never wanted their
Yeah.
flaws to be like considered something bad all the time. If anything, Gwen's flaw is that she came out much more human than they wanted her to be. And like human in a general sense, I have like different opinions on like what humanity means, but at least in Gwen's sense, she just ended up becoming really empathetic and just like really loving life itself and just kind of like vibing, just likes being around. And then, at the start of the story, it gets to the point where the day is approaching where she has to go and kill off everything. Lay this planet to rest and hopefully convince all the missing members of the family to come back home because now they're in the wasteland. And she just doesn't want to do it. Not into it at all. And that was kind of like one of the things that I was getting into with like her kind of becoming sick and slowly just kind of getting worse over time. Though we never really got much into the slowly getting worse over time.
Oh
That
man,
is like,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my brain is just thinking of like an Onion article headline of just like murder machine would rather spend day petting kittens and watching the stars.
Exactly. Exactly. She is just the world's nicest murder machine. I'm thinking of it's not a one-on-one because it is not similar at all, and very few people are probably going to understand who I'm referencing, but giving me a lot of like a nicer version of Val from the Silverses. Like War Machine just wants to pet cats and talk to birds.
I'm sorry, just the fact that Richard accidentally became a monster lover is just like a thing that's clicking in my head.
It's just a little tie-in with like Richard of just being there, and like it wasn't like even when you made a character because you didn't know I was gonna do that with Gwen. Like you didn't.
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah, you were just like, this is Gwen. She's Richard's wife, and I'm like, congratulations. Mentally, I was like, congratulations. She's also the Antichrist.
So congratulations, you give me the perfect in.
That's exactly what I did with it. So it was just a lot of fun to come up with that. And I was actually like I had like a kind of devastating way for that last session that would have been like the end of the fourth arc, where it's like we had like the big reveal with Jack realizing that what Jack's big spoiler thing of Marjorie being um what was it? Marjorie being abstinence, making the all the grandpa jokes he was making really funny in hindsight. Um, but also the whole thing with Drake and having to deal with the end of his arc, and then I was gonna plan on like the last thing being with Richard, where Richard's going home, and waiting for him on the kitchen table in his place is a letter from Gwen, who I was gonna have this like long pre-written letter where she's like explaining like, the circumstances of her childhood, and like as the more you into it, the more you realize like, oh shit, Gwen's a monster. Oh shit, she's a war weapon. Oh shit, she's the fucking thing that at that point you guys would have known about, of like, oh yeah, you think like these four horsemen are the only like big monsters we got. No, there's something else that's coming, and that thing is going to be unstoppable and like destroy everything, and you're really just wasting your time with all this. And that would have been like the realization that that thing is Gwen.
I mean, listen, I'm not saying I would have made this joke back then, but now that I'm like willing to like make dumb jokes about it, I hate that my brain just goes. Richard would just be like, still would.
Honestly, good for him.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Living a dream of a lot of people. It's like married to a demon. It's just like, good job, man. Good job.
Finally, my succubus dreams could be fulfilled.
Well, not specifically succubi, but
No, I'm just like, when I think of like people wanting to date a hot demon, that's where my mind goes.
yeah, that's fair. That's understandable.
Yeah, but that was like my big thing with Richard. I'm kind of wondering, like, how do you think Richard would have reacted to that, other than the would still hit?
No, that's a joke. I just would have been making a ton out of character. Oh man, but no, let's be real. The man would have a goddamn existential crisis.
Ah, yes. This man has had his, what it would be at this point, like his third existential crisis since you guys started this game.
I mean, yeah, you find out the boogeyman's real, the world's ending, and that your wife's the Antichrist. It's pretty big bombs.
And you get fired from your job.
I think at that point that's just a cherry on top.
That's like the least complicated thing to happen since this game started for Richard. It's just, I got fired. Oh, that
It's
sucks.
Just, like I realize with this game, like the last couple years of Richard's life have just been a slowly downward spiral. That's just picking up enough speed now.
Well, I mean, I would have kind of hoped that there would be some kind of like, maybe not the happiest ending at the end, but like a kind of happy-ish ending. Like,
I know, it's just more of a funny thing to realize. I'm just, oh, this is Richard's not very good time.
Richard is having a bad time.
But
That's
hey, listen, half the time we make OCs is to make them suffer.
yeah. It just we love making OC suffer. I had like an idea for how I would have wanted like the end of the last arc to happen. I kind of would have I like personally like imagined it being like a big meeting with like, the monster hunting group and anybody who's like super relevant enough to be there with the family, and basically would have just been like an argument of just being like, why don't you just like lay down and die, and you guys just being like, why do you think that's like a normal thing to ask people to do? Hello.
Yes, we have a whole like monologue about the indomitable human spirit.
Well, I mean, I always like that's like my one thing is like I never wanted these like characters to feel like that they're like in like I mean they're obviously like very much like we're superior than you, but not in the like you guys are tiny ants, so we have the right to wipe you down. It's more of like we fucked around with your planet long enough, and you guys and like a lot of shit happened with it. We feel like we're doing you a favor by wiping you out, which is kind of not something anyone should do. But
Like
that's
the whole perspective, like you only got this far because of us. Why can't we just take it back?
Yeah, and it's just more of like they kind of seeing it as like a euthanization. You put down a sick dog, which is not exactly how the people on Earth see it, obviously, because it's like, well, if that shit's happening, then you fix it. And they're like, well, why not just get rid of it?
Mm.
Um, Very much why their whole family dynamic isn't really working out for them at the moment, considering like a bunch of people left. But yeah, that's just kind of how I went with it. And so depending on how that would have went, like I would have wanted like at least Gwen to have a happy ending,
Yeah.
or at least as happy as an ending as like what she was supposed to be can be. I very much would have not wanted an ending unless you guys like significantly fucked up really badly, like when Jason was rolling poorly and had Marjorie thinking that he was trying to seduce her.
I still love that. That is just sometimes when dice roll poorly, it's great.
Yeah. there's like one bit in Critical Role where it's like in one arc Scanlan was gambling and he gambled so badly just constantly through this whole arc that he lost like so much gold and he paid so much money for spices because he thought it was drugs. And then they got to like another place and they were like, yeah, the lady that you need this item from, she loves playing card games. So Scanlan was like, naturally, I have to be the one that gambles, and he fucking loses.
Glorious.
And it was all specifically because his player rolled so badly. But yeah, no, that was like what my mind was like thinking of. And it's just like those funny moments where like things happen badly. We've had that with other games that we've played since Revelations Nevada, but I don't know if um I should talk about those ones, considering this is not about them. This is about my game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been enjoying my time playing a few like other characters, but like it's the thing of like when you play D&D, you just end up making way too many characters that like are possibly never going to see the light of day. Luckily, we have games
Yes.
like Baldur's Gate for that.
I don't have Baldur's Gate, unfortunately, but I've been like making in my head like a couple of D&D blorbos that I've just been really wanting to play as, but haven't had the game to play as them in.
Oh heck
Um,
yeah! Tell me about a few of them after, like later after we're done recording.
I mean, I could just like give you like a brief thing. Like one of them was going to be like a kobold cleric, and the other one was going to be a dragonborn blood hunter.
Oh, nice, nice. All right,
Yeah.
should we go into like some of the other topics that we need to go over? Like,
I actually think that might be everything. So the last thing on my thing is just talking about D&D plans, but we kind of already did that.
yeah, no, like hopefully I can finally get around to doing that module, like because I'm hoping to mostly do modules before I do like a homebrew campaign, because get some of this stuff under my belt, get more experience running this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just hope to be able to play in more games. Like I like DMing, I just don't like having to do it all the time.
Yeah, I'm looking into Wild Beyond the Witchlight because I'm pretty sure everyone and their mother has done like Here There Be Goblins a little too much.
That is completely fair. I mean, just something that would be fun.
Lost Minds of Fendover is the actual name. I'm just remembering the name of the.
The Adventure Zone, yeah.
Yeah, no, that. Can you tell that was formative for us?
I can tell. I mean, I'm actually planning a re-listen of it soon anyway, so
Oh, nice, yeah.
yeah, only of a couple of the seasons though, just because some of
Yeah,
them are
like,
too fresh in my
not,
head.
yeah, and some of them just didn't work out.
Well, my plan is to re-listen to seasons 1, 2, and 4.
Fair,
Yeah,
fair.
those are my favorite
We don't
seasons.
talk about season 3.
I have my opinion about season 3, but since I plan on making a video about the Adventure Zone, I'm gonna hold off on that from this video.
Fair.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait for that video before I actually talk about my thoughts on season 3, because there is some good stuff with season 3, but it definitely is my least favorite Adventure Zone season.
Yeah, understandable. I think it's most people's least favorite.
Yeah. But I think that does it for everything.
All right, yeah, like I'm really not entirely sure where to go from here.
Well, since you're here, why don't you plug in any socials so people could follow you and hear some more, like, if you ever posted about, like, D&D stuff and whatnot.
Well, I mostly tend to like Twitter's Twitter ever since it was like X now. I still think that's so stupid.
We call it Twitter on this account.
Yeah, good.
It is the Dead Bird website.
I don't really use it anymore. I think I made an account just to follow some people that like I was following on Tumblr that was jumping ship, but now like I mostly just use Tumblr still, and also Artfight, which is only really used once a year. But hey, it's fun.
I mean, you all could go in and
both,
get some cool attacks from John.
Heck yeah! The name on there is Animated Zombie, small A, big Z.
I'll be linking that down in the description, so you don't have to worry about spelling it out.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tumblr as well.
Same title.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for making the time for us to record this.
And yeah, no,
And
I'd love to like record more stuff with you if I can, if you're ever interested.
yeah, no, I've been thinking like I would love to do more actual play stuff. I just probably would not be a thing I would do for a while, specifically because
Yeah, no, if we do actual play stuff, it's probably better if we have like another campaign or two underneath our belts that have like actually reached completion.
well, yeah, and that, and also because I would like to play games as a player more and not as a DM.
Oh, absolutely understandable, my dude.
Yeah, like I have an idea in my head for another story, but I like one, I have to like think out a few kinks first, and two, I don't want to DM.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for talking.
Yeah, no problem. I was glad to be here.
Yay!
Yeah.
And here we are with do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Joe or Joseph. I played Drake Gibbs on Revelations Nevada, and hello!
Yeah! Everybody's favorite man with secrets.
Loudmouth, bat swinging, aggressive son of a bitch with a past that's darker.
Yeah, so it has been quite a while since we've last played, but now I guess this is the episode where we go like, here's the rest of Revelations Nevada.
Here lies Revelations Nevada. Here's where we tell our grand stories. This is like a funeral march, except none of us are in the same room.
I didn't want to leave people on a cliffhanger and be like, how does the story end? We gotta know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's fair. But it's also it's both great and bad. It's kind of like mourning the loss of something that could have been.
we could thank COVID for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, with COVID going on, and at least in my case, not knowing how to do recording stuff and not being able to do a lot of recording stuff. Um,
I think COVID was the kicker, but I also think the other thing is like we had a lot of trouble getting everybody together because everybody's lives just kind of went off in vastly different directions once COVID-19 hit.
yeah, exactly. That timing, scheduling, um, between when I started Revelations Nevada and now I switched jobs and I went back to school, so that was a thing.
Oh yeah, and then I ended up getting my degree, and now I'm just at a job that I really love, and it's been kind of a hassle to get anything done. Like Daryl messages me, "Hey, do you have time for like doing this recording?" And I'm like, uh,
Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm like, and now I'm swamped with like so many other projects that I'm like sitting down and writing Revelations Nevada. It's like it's been like basically a year since we last recorded an episode, if not like 2 years.
So I will put on the record that I have been the one that's been begging for it to come back. There was another D&D game that we, as in me and Daryl, were both in. That I put the ultimatum that I didn't want to do another game of that until we did another game of Revelations Nevada, which unfortunately killed both games.
Yeah, no, it's
Oops.
yeah. I mean because I think let's see. First there was COVID, and then there was school, which at least for me, school was the big kicker. Um, because I originally moved to a different state for school, and then I came back,
Yeah.
and then things were bad, but I was at a different school, and yeah, now we're here.
Yeah, and then for me, I kind of just stayed at school the entire time, so it was kind of like my norm until I got my job, and then that became my big kicker.
Yeah, but I mean, shit happens, I guess. We just didn't want to leave anybody on a big old, like, oh, but what about the game? I
That and then
wasn't.
like the 5 to 6 moves that everybody had collectively.
Yeah, like exactly. Like I moved to a different state for a little bit, and then I came back
Like
here.
you moved to a different state, and then me and John both independently moved, and then we both moved again.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it's just been like a lot of stuff where it's like during COVID and like pre-COVID, like I had just graduated from community college, and I was working at a new job at the time that we started Revelations Nevada, but like I wasn't like super busy with it. It was a full-time job, but we still made like I had the time to be able to like make a day for us to just hang out, and that's when we did our live recordings on TikTok.
Yeah, we did have those. We did have the Fridays where everything lined up exceptionally well. And the other thing about the sort of, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying it was all because of COVID. COVID definitely had a lot of factors. But I do also believe that it was just kind of that everybody was at a pivotal changing point in their lives.
I
Like, I
believe,
remember when we started Revelations Nevada, I just started at my 4-year college.
yeah.
And that was where things became a lot more intense for me. And then I basically finished that degree through COVID. So as I said, it definitely did have a lot of impact as to when we would play, how we would play, how that course load would work. But I really don't feel comfortable blaming it all on COVID because not just life in general, but also because the fact that there were times where me and you would sit down and have a discussion, and it would be like, well, what if we went in this way for our character? What if we went in that way for our character? Where there was also those like writing discussions that we were having at the same time for Revelations Nevada.
I think like what kept us from playing the game was COVID, because without COVID, I think we could have easily have finished the whole game within I kind of want to say probably, if not the end of that year, the beginning of the year afterwards. Like I think at the pace we were going with the game, we would have easily have finished Revelations Nevada by the next year at the latest, considering like each section was like about 10-ish episodes, somewhere in that range. Would have been longer with like the like current to later arcs, but
And then there
nothing.
also would have been stuff like I know we talked about I know we talked about a winter intermission, and then we also talked about privatized versions for each character to go into more of their sort of depth.
Yeah, that was always like what the respites were going to be. Were just like little private like meetings with characters that tie into like the next arc a little bit, but more so to just bring the characters to like interact with other characters more.
Yeah, and then also I remember at one point in time we were talking about, for Drake in particular, having like a particular like a I don't know the right word for this. A flashback session?
Yeah, a
That
flashback
was
session.
definitely that was definitely in the books for a while for Drake too, because his backstory got incredibly complex really quickly.
Yeah, I think of like all of them, like Drake's probably like of all the backstories I was given for the characters, his was definitely the most detailed. Jax was like a little bit harder to not tie in, but like to bring in into a more complicated way, specifically just because like I had the reins on that. I asked Jason for the reins on that, and so I was like, "Can you trust me with this?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." But like with Drake, you basically have down like he's a televangelist. He made this like awful deal with this member of the family, and I say awful for him. Basically, I mean the benefits were great until he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and I when I was like thinking about like, well, how am I gonna have this bite him in the ass? It's just like, oh yeah, I know how. Because my plans for that was Drake's like arc, the last three are like the one that we stopped on, as well as the next two after that, were supposed to be like a little bit heavily focused on one of the members of the party, and Drake's was supposed to be the last one before the like final arc of the story.
Yeah.
And, and
Oh, sorry.
no, what were you gonna say?
I remember us talking about this a lot because I was going to bring up a joke that you told me one of the times when we were discussing sort of how the story was going to go. And you were like, everybody gave me a bunch of rooms and they're not even decorated. And you came in here and you decorated the whole house and showed me exactly what pinpoints it. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Because I thought it was funny. And like the whole thing about Drake was me basically going, what if like the kid from The Devil Went Down to Georgia, like the song was just a total shit canoe?
Yeah, I
And
was.
we just kind of went flying from there. Like at one point, you're like, "We're gonna have these things called miracles." When we were first originally designing these characters, and I remember you saying the word miracle. I remember sitting up, slapping my knee, and going, "He's a televangelist now."
Yeah, and I wanted his arc to be like his past comes back to haunt him, and I wanted it to be in a kind of way where it's like Savorna wouldn't be able to interfere. So that arc was gonna be somebody, whether it was like somebody Drake worked with or somebody who was like in charge of like the production or whatnot, basically posing as, I forgot what the televangelist name he went by was.
Jimmy Fox.
Yeah, Jimmy Fox. He was supposed to pose as Jimmy Fox, basically taking over like Drake's job and taking advantage of his fame. And Savarna, the entity that he originally made a deal with, was originally just going to go straight up kill this guy because she thought he was the actual Jimmy Fox. But this Jimmy Fox had gotten into contact with the monster for that arc, who was Warren. And so Savorna actually was supposed to go ask for Calvin's help, and by extension, Drake, Jack, and Richard's help, not knowing that Drake was the actual Jimmy Fox that she knew. And she was supposed to be like, "Hey, I'm torn because I want to kill this guy, but that would probably involve me having to get rid of the monster, which I don't want to do because this thing is supposed to be here to kill all you guys because I don't like you guys, so help me." um, and
I feel
Warren told,
like
yeah,
no, go ahead. I'll say what I need to afterwards.
yeah, it was Warren. Warren is a monster who's really funny because her whole thing is that she can't die, but she's very persuasive. Like her whole thing was like the aspect of war, but like one of the things with like war is like the portrayal with like violent war is like, this like bloodthirsty character is all fun and all, but I wanted to go with more so of just like how like saying the right thing could set people off, and that was
Well,
originally was her whole thing was supposed to be.
yeah, especially in this climate. The other thing that I find really funny about that is that Savorna has a seemingly eternal case of if she stayed in her own lane, life would be 100 times better.
Exactly, exactly.
And she never, and same with Drake's backstory, same with all this, she just physically can't, and that is why I am so damn in love with her. She is probably one of my favorite characters you've ever made, because you were just like, what if I made the most intimidating Cthulhu-esque nonsense monster and gave it a brain the size of a chickpea?
I mean,
And just ran with it, and then we never saw her, and I was so heartbroken. And because especially since I would sit there and I would just doodle my sketchbook, like hundreds of little photos of Savorna, and then we just never see Savorna.
I know, I'm so sorry. I mean,
But for more context about this, and more context about the whole Jamie Foxx thing, especially since a lot of Drake stuff was actually revealing his past bit by bit, I do think we should, if you want me to, I can go into that and sort of explain that as well, because we kept a lot of that hidden because we wanted to reveal bit by bit. That was supposed to be what my crooked, using my luck points as a crooked was supposed to lead to, is both the revealing of that past and for what I thought would be Savorna getting closer and closer and closer.
yeah, eventually. I mean, she was going to come like at some point, but like,
Yeah.
but like, I think like if you start using your luck points, I might have either have her come in sooner, depending on how many you use, or like,
Or you would have given her more knowledge.
yeah, more knowledge. Like, make it worse for Drake for the fact that that Savorna not only like is in Rhodes' way, but also for the fact that she is like, maybe getting suspicious about Drake.
Yeah.
Because if he never used any of his luck points, she probably would have showed up and been like, who the fuck is this guy? I don't really care anyway.
I was in a constant competition because John would get eternally pissed that I would never use any of my luck points when we were in game. He would like gripe about it behind the scenes. He'd be like, well, I'm almost out of luck points and you two haven't used any. And then Jason's excuse would be like, well, I'm saving them. And my excuse would be, well, I don't want to die, buddy. Not all of us are mundane. Some of us have consequences for our actions. But
It's a lot of
God,
fun.
there is so much to Drake. Drake was one of those characters that I really put a lot of myself into, and a lot of like the personality and the things that I was going through in my own life into at the moment. So I think I'm just going to start with the backstory, and then we'll kind of like steamroll out from there a lot of the potential ideas for Drake that I know you and I talked about a lot, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Drake's backstory, and the thing is that Drake, contrary to the others where they very much had that distinct cowboy southern accent, was the only one who wasn't actually from that area. He was born in upstate New York, had very like very hyper religious conservative like father figure or parent, and it ended up causing a lot of conflict. They would get into a lot of fights, a lot of back and forth in his teenage years, and there was a lot of heated arguments about his sexuality as well. And it got to the point where the moment that Drake turned 18, he got sick of all the shit. He ran off to New York to try and set up a better life for himself, but he didn't exactly know what that meant. Here he met up with a lot of more shitty characters, either people that he met from trying to make it on his own as a, like, 18-year-old teen. I mean, you remember being 18 and being dumb as hell. I remember being 18 and being dumb as hell, at least.
I don't think there's a lot of people who remember being 18 and not being an idiot.
Yeah! And he ended up striking it out with these guys, and they were like, hey, you know it brings in a lot of money, right? Like, we can just do, like, this whole religious gig, pretend we're pastors, and then bring in a lot of money. And Drake was like, hold on, hold my beer. I've got, like, a whole history behind this. I can be the face of this. And become the face of it, he did. He was the one he was the mouthpiece. He was the one in charge. He was the one that everybody would give the ideas to, and he would speak them out and speak the truth about them. And he became, like, crazy popular under this alias named Jimmy Fox. And it got to the point where, you know how when you're in an act for so long, you kind of start losing who you are?
Yeah.
That's very much what happened to him, is that he kind of, somewhere along the way, the lines blurred between this alternate identity and who he actually was. And he started affecting the relationships around him, his own happiness. I know we talked for a bit about, like, the fact that he also just didn't eat that much as Fox, and that, like, a part of his thing was that he had very negative self-image issues, very negative eating issues. He had a very distorted view about his own life and where he wanted to go and his ambitions. And at the time, he thought a lot of his ambitions were heading towards monetary wealth. Getting enough money so that he could leave this all behind, go hide somewhere for the rest of his life, and do God knows what at the time. So when Savorna came around, realizing that he was acting like this big, high, mighty priest and going, hey, these things are real. Like, these gods that you're pretending to be are real, and we hate you. We utterly despise you. We can't stand you.
I think the funniest part about that is she's the only one that actually gave a shit. The other ones are just
like... Yeah, she was the only one!
Yeah. Like, all
and you see that
just...
with Monty, because Monty didn't give a fuck.
Monty much was just like, whatever.
Monty was just like, I appreciate your honesty. You're the only normal one out of these hunters. And he took her up on the deal for wealth and struck it big, and then realized that he could take her deal, twist it against her, and get even more wealth to run off with. And so he did. He turned it against her. He turned the audience against her. He turned everyone against her, basically, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, he basically made her a big fool.
Yeah, he made her an idiot. And she was hopping mad. Met up with him in the back of an alley. Gave him the chewing out of a lifetime. He was practically laughing it off, being like, you should have seen this coming. These are the mistakes. These are the errors of your way. I'm sorry that you didn't think out your end of the bargain that well. My apologies for taking advantage of the situation. And she went, okay, let's take off the kid gloves now, and then proceeded to try killing him.
Yeah.
And that's where, during the game, he had this scar hidden on his arm, which I feel like we can show now. I can send you his references. Of this curling tentacle-like scar.
I think I could probably pull him up on ArtFight, and I could just put him on the screen real briefly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew you didn't want to.
I mean, I could just put it on the screen briefly. It's not an issue.
But he had this like curling tentacle scar down the entirety of his arm that she gave him, and he basically did anything to change his identity. Went back to his old name, stopped dyeing his hair blonde. He got a nose job that was inevitably screwed over, which is why he constantly had the bandage over his nose, and which is why when we would do the stuff, since I never liked the voice acting for your D&D characters type deal, but John and Jason were really into it, so I kind of had to play along and would give him a lot more of like a higher pitched nasally voice.
I wanted everybody to have like a closer, like, with the exception of like Calvin, which Calvin just had like, you know, kind of like a more like calmer non-Southern voice, whereas all the characters who were supposed to be from, you know, the South have like a more thicker Southern accent.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that with you. I'm saying that with the other two PCs.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is a subject of debate we had a lot. At least PC side we did.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was just always kind of against doing the voice acting for it, and I was like, okay, if I make him from like the general area of which like the people I know are from, I don't have to put on that much of an accent. And if I do a little bit more nasally, it gives it the impression that I'm like doing like a voice for the character.
And I think that also fits considering the bad nose job.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I gave him the bad nose job. I don't know if you remember, but there was like a really long time where we went back and forth in designs a lot. And he was originally supposed to be like maybe like 19 or 20 when the story started. And then we also had designs based on the fact that he didn't have the nose job. There were designs where he was a brunette. I distinctly remember the brunette designs.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like back and forth that we did. I think that's kind of why I ended up giving Drake a lot of information, because we would basically sit there for hours upon hours, back and forthing ideas, almost having like this tennis match style ordeal, where we would just sit there. Where we would just sit and be like, oh, how do you feel about this? No, I think that might be a little bit too much. What do you feel about this? The idea for Savorna came immediately after I gave this idea of like a jokey televangelist to Daryl, and Daryl just kind of sat there, pulled out a sketchbook, like maybe spent 3 minutes on a headshot, and went, "How do you feel about this for the antagonist?" And I was like, "Good, I love it." And
yeah, I want her to be this kind of like elegant figure, like elegant secret spy-esque figure who is just kind of like, I'm a woman on a mission, but she's also dumb as shit.
I'm girl bossing. I'm girl bossing way too close to the sun. Don't you know this, Kelvin? There's no such thing. Who's Icarus?
She's just like, I never had an Icarus before. I don't want to try it.
We would literally sit here and go back to forth on these designs, and that's honestly why I kind of fell in love with a lot of the Hearth and Soul, because we put so much time and effort into them.
Oh yeah,
it was fantastic. It was so much fun.
I remember when I was like, because originally, like Jeremiah and Beatrice, I don't know if you came up with the names for them or if I came up with the names for them, but I didn't have a lot with them originally until you and I were talking more about the Hearth and Soul, because the one that we talked about the most was it was funny because I had the idea for Chaz, and I was like, what if Drake's boss at the Hearth and Soul was like a monster and his name was
Yes.
Chaz. Chaz Waste was his name.
You sat there and you're like, what if I gave, you sent me a Discord message, you're like, what if I gave Drake a boss that was a plague doctor? And I remember responding to you, can I draw him?
Yeah, no,
and you were just like, if you have a design, yeah, sure, I just gave you this idea. I send you the art, and I'm like, I think they should date.
Well, what was funny too. What was funny too is because I was like, I pitched the idea for Chaz Waste, and then like you were like, I don't know if I'm into this, and then you drew him, and you're like, they're gonna date.
Well, okay, we had the idea, the original ending when you originally asked us how we wanted our character stories to end, and I told you that I wanted Drake's story to end with him finding himself and him having like a partner or a boyfriend. Yeah, a boyfriend. Yeah. I remember I was like, I want him to be happy. I want him to be himself in all ways, which includes his sexuality and having a boyfriend. Because at the time, I was also like I was having sort of a conflict of identity with my own sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling you all this, and then we were just kind of like, okay, we'll think of like a boyfriend design when we get towards the end of Revelations Nevada. And then I end up sitting here drawing Chaz, who Chaz's entire design was based off of a plague doctor's mask. So he has like the very distinctly large, prominent nose, and this, like the smaller eyes, a little bit wider set than I would usually draw eyes.
Yes.
And I wanted to keep like those very dark, mysterious, ethereal colors. And I was like, oh, he's kind of sexy in a Howl's Moving Castle kind of way. They should date. And then Daryl's like, why did you do this?
I mean, I was down. I was down with it. Because
yeah, no, you were down with it, and it was like it killed two birds with one stone, and it was just downright hysterical.
Well, my original idea with Chaz was because a lot of the monsters in this world were sent down with a purpose, and them fulfilling that purpose allows them to eventually wear off and die. Because not trying to fulfill that purpose is agonizing. And Chaz's purpose was to cure all the diseases, and the reason for the plague doctor-esque stuff was because Chaz is the reason that the bubonic plague had happened, and so he had decided that he wasn't going to try it anymore. And part of running the bar and also his own like apothecary side stuff was him like negating the effects of not trying to cure every single disease anymore because he didn't want to start another outbreak on accident.
Yes, I remember he made drinks like you would make an alchemist, or like an alchemist. I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
I also remember when I was writing up stuff for my degree, and one of the things that I do was I had to write a series of short stories, like 13-page long short stories. I remember going really hard into Chaz then. Because I was like,
Yes.
let me just do like a character study on Chaz then. And then Chaz ended up being a lot more of an interesting character too, because he was just like, it was actually a character study into both Chaz and Drake, but it did focus a little bit more on Chaz towards the end of it. And the fact that he did have this still like very serious, very grim, very morose personality that he just couldn't really show because one, it was always downright inopportune, and two, it clashed with his personality of wanting to be like a bartender, wanting to be the guy that helps all ales, so he kind of just had to keep it hidden that entire time as well.
Yeah. Like, it was just, like, really fun to come up with stuff for the two of them. And of course, like, you told me that you wanted, like, Drake's big arc to end with them actually getting together.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like those are two characters who both of them are kind of angels of death in their own right. They accidentally led to a lot more deaths than they possibly could ever redeem themselves for.
Yeah.
And they're two very, very terrible people who both don't want to be terrible anymore. And I feel like there was a lot of comfort in that for them. And that's why I felt like they would make a really great couple.
Yeah. It's like two people seeking redemption and finding each other through that.
Exactly. And oh, go ahead.
And it was just like a lot of fun, like that, and also just the found family thing that we had going on with them and Beatrice and Jeremiah. And
I was getting ready to go into that actually.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is that I also found it really interesting that we kind of just brought that into everybody in the Hearth and Soul, because when we designed the Hearth and Soul, we had a few things in mind. One, we wanted everybody to be former criminals that couldn't really get much of a job otherwise,
except for Beatrice.
Except for Beatrice. We'll go into Beatrice's whole thing in a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to deliver the rest of it before I go to Beatrice, because Beatrice is kind of the punchline.
Yeah.
Is that we wanted all of them to be here for like a quote unquote dark past, and all of them to not really have a good like time getting a job outside of the Hearth and Soul. The thing with the Hearth and Soul is that it was the combined efforts of people who are desperate enough to work for a place like this and people who are like smart enough to keep a secret. So with Jeremiah, we started going into the most recent arc, but Jeremiah's whole thing was that he was a drug peddler, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
You didn't tell me much about Jeremiah because his story was so close to when we actually started this that you didn't want me like having too much player knowledge going in, which I understand, I get.
Yeah, so let me here. I'll go into what his backstory is really quick, because
and then I'll go into some of the arguments that we had about his design afterwards.
Yeah. So originally Jeremiah's backstory, like on the surface, like what I told Joe originally was that he was a drug dealer and he worked with a group in Las Vegas who were basically they cooked, he sold, very Breaking Bad-esque. And what had happened was he got caught in a really bad way, and he didn't get like caught by the police, but he got caught in a situation where he basically had to skip town for a bit. And the one thing is the group that he worked for was actually run entirely by monsters, and he was like the token human friend. So it was like this like pseudo of just like, this is the one token human friend we got. Also, he can't know that we're monsters. And so they helped him get out of town, and he actually ended up getting 2 jobs. He got the job at the gas station, which was destroyed at the end of the very first arc, and he ended up also getting the job with Chaz.
Yes. And one of the things that like I remember, I don't remember who fully came up with Jeremiah's design. I feel like it was one of those joint effort things.
Yeah,
but I remember
the only thing with Jeremiah that I specifically said he wasn't was I didn't want to make him POC, because I felt like I would have got too much into like stereotypes.
Yeah, we were going to iterations. I was the one who kind of came up with like the idea that he was very lanky, very jittery. He was always kind of peering side to side. He wasn't like the most terribly confident guy. And I remember we were getting to like the first dress where we were starting to draw him out, and Daryl's just like, make him white. And I'm like, okay, he's white. Jeez, he's white.
I wasn't like that. I was like,
admittedly, he's still probably darker than a Genshin Impact character, but
I mean, yeah, yeah, that's true because he's living in Las Vegas. So, but yeah, I just didn't want to get into that, like stereotypes involving that,
Oh,
um,
100%. I just thought it
especially.
was so funny at the time as somebody with none of this knowledge who was just like, okay, let's design these characters. And my intention was to make him white regardless, but they were just like, make him white. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
It was so funny. I've
but
never seen so much like gung ho isms for white people before.
listen, I'm only strict with like being like this character has to be white if it's like for something specific, not because like I don't like drawing POC characters or making them, which is not the case. There's a lot of
I know it's not the case, and I'm sorry, but it's not the case. It's 100% not the case. I remember getting off the call with you and losing my mind laughing. I was losing my goddamn mind. I don't think I could breathe after that.
But that also gave you like free reign to do whatever you wanted with Beatrice because like other than like bits of her backstory, which was that she's the kid of two miracles who I don't remember if it was a human and a miracle or two miracles, but she already knew about monsters before coming to Roadsway.
I remember what it was. It was that she was the child of a human and a miracle, but the miracle that her father was actually directly under Calvin, so she had a lot of like Calvin's sort of like aesthetics.
Yeah,
Like she had like the bright gold eyes, she had the very angelic presence to her.
yeah. She's just
And
this
which
like
is something that we wanted to go into is I remember when we were drawing her at the time, we kind of drew her curls more upwards like a halo
yeah.
to kind of mimic that.
Yeah, she just has like this like very angelic feel to her, and
Yeah.
she's just like a lot of fun. Did you want to go into her backstory?
Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more to the angelic thing, and then we'll go into the backstory. Because I don't think people know what these characters look like, and they're not on my art fight anymore. I'm sorry. I'm not putting them back up for a 2-minute bit on a video. You're gonna have to take the L on that one. But she had like this very in contrast to Jeremiah, she was very dark skinned. And we mentioned that she had like very loose ring curls, very close to like a halo. But the other thing is that she was also a lot shorter than the rest of the cast, and she was also a bit chubbier than the rest of them. She had like a very cherubic type body.
Hmm.
And she was always dressed in like really bright colors, really high fashion. But just to give you guys a mental image. Now for her backstory. She was originally a grade school teacher. And on her first day of the classes, she was late, she was in a bind, she was in a rush. She goes 25 in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone and gets pulled over by the cops and realizes that she can't go into her first day as a teacher like that, and then leaves town for good, and then acts like she has the darkest criminal past out of all of them. Out of, I'm a televangelist, I caused the bubonic plague, one of the biggest losses of life in the entirety of human history, and I peddle drugs, and she was over here acting cool and edgy and dark with the big boys with, I went 25 and a 20. So, and I remember we were talking, and I was like, we gotta give her, like, the worst fucking crime ever, like, the stupidest crime. Like, it should be, like, the least intimidating thing in comparison to these guys.
Yeah, no, I just thought I thought that specifically would have been like a bit comedic because it's like, you get to like Chaz's like because early on we pretty much mentioned what Chaz did in the actual show, but
Yeah.
then like, slowly getting into Drake's. The second arc focuses on Jeremiah. So then everybody's like, "Oh boy, what did Beatrice do? She sped
Nothing.
a little too much."
She did literally nothing. I am not going to call anybody out in this group, but I know everybody here did her crime at least once or twice.
But yeah, no, it's the stuff that holds Beatrice back isn't the fact that she sped a little too hard. It's her own guilt
It's literally her own guilt and shame, and it was downright hysterical. And so when we were designing these, we kind of designed her with this intention to be like the more wise, insightful one. She was always kind of going to be there to lend a hand if anything really went wrong. But at the same time, I think the fact that she was in the Hearth and Soul made her a worse criminal than anything she did beforehand. I do genuinely feel like taking $10,000 in bribery money was a bit more criminal than going 5 miles per hour over the speed limit.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot that Drake did that. That he just gave her
No,
that.
and now that we are like out of the woods, I'm going to put this on record. That was a counting mistake on my half. I did not realize that a stack of 100s was actually 10,000. I presumed it was 1,000 because in my mind, I don't know why I thought 10 $100 bills looked like that, but I did. And I didn't realize it until Daryl started cackling, and I'm like, what do you mean? And Daryl's like, you don't know how much money you gave her. And I was like, no, I don't. Like $1,000. And Daryl's like, no, not $1,000.
That's 10,000 in a stack. Sometimes 5,000.
Yeah, and then Jason's over here, since we were still doing like the in-person calls at that time, and I think it was the in-person calls, and then the one after that was also the one where everybody started ribbing me as well, is where Jason shook his head. He just like shook his head sadly with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. And I realized I fucked up. But we had to keep on going. Like, the show must go on. Joe fucks up, but Joe's not gonna, like, ask for a retcon. Joe will live with the stupid mistakes that Joe makes, and then Joe will carry on with them. And I remember just being like, oh, everybody's gonna eat me alive for this. And then they proceeded to, except for John, who thought it was also $1,000.
It's just really funny.
It was hysterical. Like, it is one of those things that I go back at, like, the game-wise, and, like, chuckle about. Like, I don't think I've had, like, a bad memory of anything that happened in Rhodes Way. Or,
No.
like, no, I think I was, like, the most gung-ho. I was the one who was helping you, like, write stuff in the background for other people's characters, or give you ideas, or sort of just, like, figure out where the plot naturally ended. I was, like, I don't want to say I was, like, backseat GMing, but I was definitely, like, helping write out of holes.
Yeah, no, you were really great at like bouncing back and forth ideas, especially since like you know, you like me, like we both love writing stuff, and we're both like writing our own
Yes.
stories and things.
Yeah.
And so that like made it great to be able to like go back and forth on ideas for each other. And like I fling something at you, and then you fling something else at me, and it's like rubber bands, and eventually something sticks.
And then we would just both sit there and go, like, this is the best opportune way that it could have gone. And it was absolutely delightful. But on the other hand, I knew that with that sort of, like, mentality that I went into that game with, and with that, I couldn't just, like, back out of it and be like, you know, this is like a really bad idea for Drake. Maybe we should retcon this. No, I had to be, like, at all times, I had to be all in 110% of the time. And now we're going to go into the other things that I kind of planned for Drake, now that we got, like, everybody else not heard this out of the way, so that way we can get on to the going.
Yes.
Is that one of the other micro arcs that I wanted for Drake is this actually started. We actually started this micro arc in the first respite that we did. And that is for Drake to be an expert on the miracles, but in the most bizarre way.
Yeah.
Because with the date, it was kind of implied that there was a lot of times, including the Bass Pro Shop, everything like that, it seems like a lot of the miracles had a fascination with fish.
Yeah.
Drake was learning this, and Drake was starting to capitalize on this fact. Not in, like, any, like, terrible or malicious way, but I remember I was talking to you about the second arc respite, since we were just getting ready to, like, get the characters planned out for that.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I don't know whether I want to do Monty or I want to do Jeremiah and Beatrice. And you were like, why would you not want to do Jeremiah and Beatrice? And I'm like, because I have an idea with Monty. And it's going to be Drake sitting on a lawn chair outside of his apartment complex. and Monty's gonna come up to him and be so confused, and Drake's just gonna hand him a like tuna sashimi, nonchalant, relaxed, absolutely being like, and then Monty's gonna question it, and Drake's gonna be like, "Are you saying you don't want it?" And then Monty just like takes it,
Yeah, I think
and then they have the conversation from there.
I think that like the Drake the not the Drake thing, sorry, the Miracles being like into fish, I think that was like on a whim thing because like it just kept coming up of just Miracles being really into fish.
Yeah, it's like it kept on coming up because with the Bass Pro Shop, it kept on coming up.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and then I remember like sitting there, and we were having one of our sessions, and I was like, "Is it just me, or like, are the Miracles like really obsessed with fish?" And you were like, "Well, now they are."
I mean, it's funny too because they're living in a desert, so I imagine like even if like that wasn't just like a built-in thing, it's also just kind of like, well, they're in a desert, so it's probably a little bit of like a commodity, just being like, oh hey, look, fish.
Exactly, but not all the Miracles were there. And not to mention, the other thing that I found downright hysterical is that one of the Miracles that we were originally, one of the first Miracles that shows them in the show was a heron.
Yeah.
A fish-eating bird!
Yeah, no, because oh god, I forgot what his name was, but he was like one of the first, like, with the exception of the cannibal monster dude, he was like the very first like monster that like one of you guys fought, and I think that was also like how
Me.
I introduced, yeah, you fought him, but how I also introduced Monty, like, I don't think that was Monty's official introduction, but at least like Monty being a good ally, like an actual like good ally you guys needed at your
Yeah,
side.
that was Monty's second time having a conversation, first time biting.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I remember we were going to this like fish expert thing, and we just kept on going like off the rails with it, and which is we equally wanted to do this like part as like the whole Chaz and Drake should date thing, but also equally as part of the other sort of like semi weird arc that we were going to have was a arc of Calvin realizing that Drake was taking a lot of Calvin's falls of being an asshole over the years.
Yeah.
And part of that was including Drake doing Calvin's taxes and realizing that Calvin has been performing the tax evasion that Drake was playing for.
I think churches are actually tax exempt.
Yes, they are. Churches are tax exempt.
Yeah.
But I remember Calvin not knowing that, or Calvin not realizing that.
Yeah, Calvin doesn't know a lot of things. Calvin is kind of stupid.
Because I remember we were sitting there, we were like, oh, great. Drake's going to do Calvin's taxes. And then realizing that Drake doing Calvin's taxes meant that Drake realized that Calvin has kind of been using Drake as a scapegoat subconsciously. Including the whole pretending to be a priest, acting high and mighty, except not getting the blame for it. And that to me was doubly hysterical because Drake and Calvin got along amazingly in comparison to the rest of the group.
Well, Calvin's whole thing that I always planned with Calvin is Calvin's, like, the way that they are with, like, especially with the whole dressing up as a nun or a priest whenever they feel like it, was that, like, it's kind of like appropriating Christianity, basically.
Yes.
Because because Calvin doesn't, like, believe in God. Calvin is more so for the aesthetic and the stories based from Christianity rather than the actual, like, faith.
Yeah.
And that comes a part of with like how I have with the family, where even though Calvin like very much likes humans and likes humanity, still sees himself as being like better than it.
Yes.
Like more noble, more just like
holier than thou.
Holier.
And Drake, who's been dragged through this entire thing for the entirety of his life, is like, you're kind of a massive piece of shit about this.
Yeah. I never wanted Calvin to just be this, like, generic, like, good, like, sweet person. Like, Calvin has their flaws, and, like, they have their heart in the right place, but they're not really, like, a good person.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, like, that was, like, one of the interesting things to have with Calvin and Drake as, like, characters in this game, is, like, how much they're, like, similar, but also how vastly different the two of them are.
Yeah, and Drake ended up being a really good foil for everybody else. Like, I could have ended up playing him like a foil for everyone else. He didn't get along with Richard. He had a bit of a terse agreement with Jack, where the two of
Yeah.
them kind of like reached an agreement at one point in time to be like, we gotta just keep focus on this, and then we'll deal with all the bad shit later.
Yeah. Like just like overall I think like this like as a party, like sometimes the stuff between Drake and Richard got really mean, but overall as a party, like your characters worked out with each other, and like each of your guys' goals, even if you all didn't get along sometimes, was that. So I am going to have to go soon, so why don't we wrap up
Same
with
here.
like, yeah, with any D&D plans that you have in the future?
I just want to play D&D again. I miss it. I have not been able to find a group or anything. It's been terrible.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat, and with school and work and all that, it's like time has also just been an issue.
I've considered trying to like. There's some DMs for rent, and I've been half tempted to be like, oh, maybe we should just get like a DM for rent, and then we all meet up one day, and it's just you, me, and the DM for rent, and we play. And then I'm just like, no, but I don't want to rent out a DM. However,
Yeah.
I will say this because this is the meanest spirited thing I could have done is that in the entire time that that Revelations Nevada was on hiatus, I ran an entire campaign with Daryl as a player from tip to tail, called
Oh.
Lorson, and it was basically like a series of generations of characters going through an Americana where space is shifting around them. And we went through that entire arc, no mentions of Revelations Nevada, but we also ended up joking that they were in the same world.
I mean, they could
So
possibly can, considering the rules of Larson Bay.
they definitely 100% could be,
Yeah.
which is why I kept making the joke. But it was so mean-spirited and funny at the same time. And ever since Lorson, neither one of us have been in any games. So, like, if you're out there and you're a DM looking for players who love bouncing ideas off of you and off of each other, and are also total smartasses who will definitely have their feet in their mouth at one point in time, hey, get in the comments.
Speaking of, Joe, where can people find you at?
I'm King Threshy on most places, with the exception of Tumblr, where I'm King Threshy -official. But King Threshy on Instagram, King Threshy on TikTok, King Threshy most places. I think I'm King Threshy on YouTube too, but that one might be a bit blurry. But yeah, you can find me on most general social media, with the exception of Facebook, as King Threshy, and Tumblr as King Threshy Official.
Yeah. I will be linking socials down in the description so people can click them there if they don't feel like going to search up on the search history part. Don't you
I'm
worry about
sorry.
that. No, that is completely fine. Some people prefer links in the description. Some people prefer like a audio check. But anyway, thanks for coming for this. I really appreciate you doing the time for it.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm joined with another player. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, this is Jason. I play Jack. No last name. I can't remember what his last name is at the actual last name, but joke is the whole bit of not having a last name for the longest time, or at least one that wasn't introduced in the game for the longest time
For some reason,
until later on.
I keep wanting to make a Matt Mercer joke, and I keep thinking Jack Mercer.
Oh gods, man. Honestly, that reminds me of one of the earlier inspirations I had for Jack. Not like actual Matt Mercer there, but actually another Mercer in the form of Alex Mercer, because
Ooh,
good old Prototype franchise. But that was
nice.
also back in the beginning when I thought this game was going to be a bit more serious than it turned out to be. But at the same time, it was still it was still absolutely amazing there. absolutely had a great story going on.
I'm glad you thought so. I wanted to make a nice, fun story for you guys. Definitely did become a bit sillier, but I mean, you can't always control the outcome of like your intentions of the game versus like what actually does end up happening. So it's been
Yeah, and then it didn't help that we also started out with what we can affectionately call as the nightmare that is Rupert
oh
from
yeah,
episode 1.
God, Rupert. That is probably
Uh,
like of like everything in this game. Him being a character is probably the only thing that I really wish I didn't do. But I mean,
oh well, he exists and then he died in game.
he was there and then he was gone. Um, so it's been quite a while since like we last recorded the game. So since the beginning of the pandemic and everybody having to be stuck inside because of the 21st century equivalent of the bubonic plague, like what have you been up to? What have you been doing?
Uh,
I mean, I know, but the
well,
people listening don't.
well, since the start of COVID and afterwards, I had decided to start going back to school to work towards my degree, and that has been eating up a good chunk of my time there. But hasn't been the only thing that I've been doing. I've been playing in a couple other not recorded games, unfortunately. I know people there are very much interested in my dulcet tones and my wide range of voice acting, but
Oh, that was a really good
I did
voice. I never
show,
heard that one before.
or at least the voices that I did show off because I was too focused on trying to go, oh boy, ah, damn it. God, it's like, I'm so out of practice with Jack's voice, or at least where I was trying to go with Jack's voice.
I think if we were continuing the show, I would have to give the whole thing a re-listen because I don't really remember. Like the only thing I remember is like with Calvin, where Calvin is like a more like I know my voice is very young sounding, so like kind of like trying to put on a more like adult-ish voice that's like a bit light and a bit calming. Like this is supposed to be like an ethereal being. Who doesn't act like an ethereal being?
Yeah, and I know early on and it kind of just stayed throughout the episodes, is that I tried to go for more of some form of like Texas country accent, some accent down south there. And I know I probably did a less than perfect job. We'll just be nice and call it that there. And was wanting to go with a little bit more of a deeper, rougher, more gravelly voice. But because I was too focused on game, it would always come closer to my normal voice.
That's fair. That's fair. That's like one of the things with like RPing. Like I like our previous game that we did before we did Revelations Nevada. The one where I was like with Calypso. Like I didn't really give Calypso much of a voice, but I don't think a lot of us really did character voices for that game anyway. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
it was still really fun. And literally like for almost most of the characters in Revelations Nevada, it was mostly just my voice, but I was trying to be more southern. Unfor- Unfortunately, the farthest I can go is Southern Virginia, but um so Jack the character definitely was like left off at like an interesting part. It was your arc. It was Jack's time to shine. Jack's story. Because the last time we left him, he was
Mm-hmm.
having a meeting with Corey, who was
Yeah, I found out that he had to go and find Grandpa.
yeah, go find Grandpa. So did you want me to actually like talk about Grandpa? Because the moment you said that, I was like inside, I was laughing because that was almost exactly accurate So it also makes previous scenes in one particular previous scene in the show so much more worse. Which
Oh god, yeah.
so
We should
previously,
probably have a little bit of a talk about that.
oh yeah. So for just like for a reminder for people, so Jack's purpose as like a miracle was to go find a older, more like kind of like the head, like the quote unquote head of the family who had disappeared a while ago, named who they called Absence. And Absence was gone, and they know that Absence was on Earth, so they sent Jack down to go find Absence. Well, Jack's flaw was that they forgot.
Forgot everything about being a miracle and all that jazz.
Exactly. So just amnesia. They sent someone with amnesia to go find somebody, and the the conversation that Jack has with Corey was supposed to eventually lead to the one thing that I keep like talking about that I would like, bring up randomly and like Joe would sometimes joke about is that fuzzy warm feeling that Jack would get whenever he would go to concessions meet. And the reason for that is because Absence is Marjorie. Do you remember the grandma that you accidentally seduced or almost
God.
seduced?
God, that just it's cursed.
It's so
it's great, but
cursed.
cursed.
It's so cursed, and I was trust me, as somebody who like knew like since the beginning of the game that was her, I was like, oh god, no, please don't let this be what's gonna happen. I absolutely though 100% like before it got anywhere close to NSFW romance territory probably would have stopped it, but um I was like sitting there the whole time through that scene being like, how can I like RP this so they don't suspect anything? And I feel like thinking about it now, the easier way would have been like she's married to somebody very devoted, and I could have like had that as like an extra layer of like made up shit that Marjorie came up with to like hide her real identity. Didn't think about it at the time because I didn't think about accidentally seducing grandma, but like thinking about it now, I should have came like note for future games. Come up with contingency plans so when you don't want your character seducing grandma. But
and of course, this all comes after now that, or at least these ideas come after we've both played Elden Ring, and just the situation happened before that. So now we can't even go and say, "Oh, look, Absinthe was grandma there," and just be like, "Oh, look, married to themselves."
Absence is Radigan. But I was very excited to actually like that's like the one of the things I do regret about not continuing the game is the reveal of Absence being Marjorie, because I actually was going to do something really mean, Jason, which is the end of the last arc before the like final arc, where like all the big puzzle pieces have answers, but now they got it's like the point of the story where it's like the last big pieces of mystery are finally put in place, but now you gotta like now the like main characters have to figure out how to deal with the problem. And so in the terms of with Marjorie, I was actually gonna have you, Jake. I said Jake. I meant Drake. And Richard.
Yeah.
Richard and Calvin.
Yes, it's the party of Jack, Jake, and Jitter.
And Jalvin. I was gonna have all you. I was gonna like somehow whether it's like I make up something or I like or I like try to figure out a way to or I just tell like John and Joe behind the scenes because this was gonna be something that me and John and Joe were gonna play on you. Have all of you guys at the very very end when it's like, your guys' final scene at the end of the arc, go to Secession's meet, and that I was gonna tell Joe and John before at like the beginning of the session, before the session actually happens, to play a little prank on you. So you guys were gonna walk in, and you guys were going to meet up with the owner of Secession's Meat, and it wasn't going to be Marjorie, it was going to be this other, like, random person you've never seen before, whose name was going to be Cletus Mercury. Um, and I was gonna tell Joe and John, I was gonna be like, when you guys go to Secession's Meat is run by Cletus Mercury. There's never been a Marjorie working there ever. It's always been Cletus Mercury. Do not bring up Marjorie. Marjorie doesn't exist, right? And it was gonna be something I was gonna
Oh,
tell them
gods.
behind your back, and like have it as like a like surprise reveal. And then of course after the game, I was gonna I would have like, obviously told John and Joe, like, they'll have to keep up the, like, there's never been a Marjorie at Secession's Meet guys after that. But like in the game, I wanted it to be like a reveal where you're like sitting there like, what?
Just what the fuck?
Yeah, and
Uh,
like the whole thing was just she disappeared again, and that was going to be like at least your tie into the final arc of just being like, okay, well, this is weird. And this feels important. And I don't know if I was gonna have her like in some way reveal that she is abstinence to you, but I know that was like how that end of that arc for you was gonna go down. And I was like, I still think it's like one of the cooler ideas I had for like future scenes in the story. I am sad that I never got to do it, but I don't know. How would you have felt about that?
it would definitely have been an interesting situation. I know I personally, as a player, would have been a little bit on the paranoid side, being like, wait, what the heck? No, no, no. We have this name. We have it in the recordings of previous episodes. What the heck is going on here?
And that's
And
the
then,
point. That's the point where I do a Dungeons and Daddies, and I remove every mention of Marjorie, and I replace it with Cletus. I am not going back and editing so many episodes of a podcast just to do that.
oh gods, yeah, that would have just been just oof. Even I would feel for you there. At this point, I'd base if it actually went through at this point, I'd have said, "Look, Daryl, I owe you lunch or something like that for going through and pulling this shit off because it's brilliant, and I both love it and hate it. And the fact that you've put so much effort behind it, you need some form of reward. Let's at least grab lunch or something like that."
I think at the most, I probably would have grabbed like a previous scene, and I would have grabbed like a previous episode to play, and I would just like edit it so it's like I redo my lines, but instead of it being about Marjorie, it's about Cletus, and I play it back to you, and it's cut in with your dialogue. And I mean, like, that, like, back then I didn't know as much about audio editing as I do now, and so I don't think it would have been great if we continued the game at the pace we were going with like the amount of knowledge about audio editing I had back then. But it would have been really fun.
Oh yeah, it definitely would be, and especially if we did or do something in the future where we somehow find a way to have these characters meet up in some other future point, and just even if it's just like, oh look, Jack, Drake, and Richard are just having a little bit of a conversation with Calvin sometime far off in the frick off future or something like that.
Yeah, I like, here's my thing is I would love to run more games, just not now. Like,
Just
that's
obviously not now.
yeah,
We
like,
both have too much going on for right now.
oh yeah, like, school, and I got too many like creative projects in my belt already, and also just I'm a DM in like I'm not am a DM. I was a DM in like so many games, but like I never really get to be a player in games, or
Hmm.
at the very least, games that last longer than like a session. Because like most of the games I've been a player in recently have just been one shots, and I would like to like have some time of just being a player before I go back to being a DM again.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can also understand being on the other side of things there, of being a player for a long time, that I want to get back into DMing a game or two here, but it's about finding or at least for me, for how much I've been wanting to do, is finding the prep time for all these games that I want to run and then running all these games, but I have too many games that I want to run on that.
Well,
Not to
Jonathan,
mention there's other projects or other things such as school, other projects that I'm working on, such as a little, okay, I can't really say it's little, but a prequel story that I've been doing on the side for
ooh,
Jack that I just call Painful Walks in the Rain, that
ooh,
just kind of is going to be a like collection of stories and flashbacks of what Jack did like immediately before coming to get
Roadsway,
Secession's meet in Roseway, yeah.
yeah.
And then also just flashbacks and things before then. And then I also kind of have been working with an idea for a story that I want to work with Jack and another character of mine from another game that actually died off, where it's, hey, look, Ghost Detective Buddy Cop with their partner zombie. Just
Just
solving metaphysical crime slash mystery stuff over in Chicago.
that sounds awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, I've just been like it's the same thing with me. It's with school, and like especially next year, which is going to be my senior year, I have to do a senior film, which is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. But it's going to be a lot of work, and definitely not like I'm going to already have enough time, hard time like keeping up with like my comic schedule because I'm kind of strict with keeping up with a consistent schedule for my comic. But also just like having to do a film on top of that, on top of all my other schoolwork, because I'm going to be having packed classes for these next 2 semesters, so I could actually like graduate in the spring. And on top of that, having like if I had to like write a D&D game campaign, and even if it's like something that updates once a month, like that's kind of like the only that's like one of the reasons why if I was to join a game now, I'd like to be a player because like all I have to do is just show up and like
show up, remember certain details of what happened on the previous session, make jokes.
have fun. Like I don't have to do too much brain work outside of that. Like I mean, granted, playing a game, you're gonna want to play the game and have fun, and yeah, of course. But like I don't want to have to like sit and be like, have to also think of like with all these like 20 million other things I'm gonna have to be doing this next year. Like also have to like think of like writing a D&D game that everybody will enjoy and have fun with. And
Both the story wise and encounter balancing.
yeah, exactly. Which I mean, like I with like RevNav, that was like a thing, and like the one thing, at least on my end, that is really unfortunate is the amount of time we took between sessions. When we tried getting back into it,
Oh gods, yeah.
yeah, which
Like
is
I was so hyped for when we were trying to get back into it, but just the inconsistencies just made everything difficult there on getting a good bit of momentum there.
yeah, which is pretty unfortunate. I mean, the one nice thing though is I mean at least we got like a good bit of it done, and I know
Oh
next
yeah.
time if we ever wanted to record an actual play again, like what to do, how to do it, and now that like I at least on my end have knowledge of like audio editing, we don't have to be in the same room to record like we did for that first arc of RevNav.
Oh yeah. Not to
Yeah.
mention, I know that one thing that I would definitely like to do more personally here is that the next time that we do a recorded game, if and when that ever happens, is I'd probably want to flesh out my character more than just go, oh, look, I had this edgy view of him before. Oh, wait, this game's not as edgy as I thought it was going to be. Now I have to make adjustments to have it be more fitting rather than being, oh, here I am, gruff cowboy person. I don't know why I'm doing this deep of a voice now and not doing some form of cowboy accent while speaking, but here we go.
If you ever need a goofy if you ever want goofy cowboy, I could introduce you to a podcast called Wobegon. But yeah, RevNav definitely was meant to be a more serious story, but like the one thing is the game kind of adapts with the players, and
Oh,
we
very much so.
and the game that we came off of before RevNav was definitely a lot more of a darker story than RevNav was, even with the like more mature themes that RevNav does kind of touch on. But
Or at least we're approaching adjacent to at times.
I mean, yeah, I feel like opening up with like, "Hey, yeah, hi, my name is Calvin, and my family wants to genocide your whole species," is a very it's already a mature enough a topic. But yeah, it definitely is. I think another thing that like I would have to figure out if I ever do like a recorded show again is to adapt the story to like my players. Because I know
Yeah.
John definitely is more of like the lighthearted player. And I know like with you and Joe, like you guys definitely tend to lean a bit more towards the like the stuff that RevNav originally was going to be like, such as like cannibal child killers and things like that. But I think that's all part of like, especially since RevNav was my first game, just like kind of like figuring that out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anyway, what was like for Jack's arc? Because I know we talked a bit about like his story with like looking for this person, but like Jack personally, you mentioned developing him further. Like, is there a direction that you were kind of hoping to go towards for his story?
I didn't have anything that stuck out at mainly at this time after us having the little bit of discussion and then the revealing game of, oh, look, was supposed to go search for absinthe and find out more of who they are. Well, Jack finding out more of who they are as a miracle there. That was a nice little journey that I would have loved to have continued on there. Besides that, other things we'd have to, or would have had to have discussions of, such as some of the characters that I've come up for again, painful walks in the rain and whatnot, the whole prequel story for Jack, such as Amelia Merlane, who is in that story a kind of sort of love interest, but at the same time is just not willing to wait around for Jack to get his stuff together together there, because again goes into more of the details of the whole miracle bits of just Jack not realizing that the call is almost dragging him like a magnet to all these different locations,
Yeah.
even until he gets into Rhodes Way to just go and do something there.
It's also that's one of the things that I enjoyed with Jack as a character is like the amnesia aspect of his character and like having that call that unfortunately all miracles have towards their goal and like what they're supposed to do. And it adds like a little extra layer of tragedy to Jack's story, other than like, him being something that until he completes his purpose is not granted the mercy of being able to die. Or at least like, like conventionally, like, because monsters in this world can still be killed, but they can't like die, like they can't grow, they don't change, they're consistently the same. But the that like little bit of just like having to spend all those years like trying to answer a call that he doesn't know what it's for, and it's just like a nice little thing to add for his story to have. And I think it made him like such a, like a fantastic character to like think about. And
Not to mention, it gave us so much of an open-ended bit to even just sometime later mid-game, if we wanted to, and have a discussion, just come up with details that just involve Jack. Because, again, when we came up with this idea, you literally told me to trust you with this, and
I asked you,
here we are, go with it.
that was like my biggest worry when I asked you that, is because I didn't want to feel like I was writing your character for you. I just wanted this one little thing that I write. I was like, can I do this? And you were like, yeah, go for it. And I'm glad that it worked. I'm glad that you think it worked out well.
Mm-hmm.
Because my biggest worry was that it would be something that you would have felt does not fit for Jack at all. And I'm very glad that it is still able to fit into his story, because I very much didn't want to be like me being like like oh, none of the stuff that you came up with Jack anymore like is valid anymore because this is the actual canon. And like instead adds to that like extra layer of tragedy that Jack has as a character, and like his own unknown past that he doesn't know anything about because he doesn't know like, why am I here?
Just wakes up on Earth one day and it's just like,
Bye then.
wait, why am I coming out of some guy's shadow? Oh, I exist now. Cool.
He just comes out of a shadow. He's like, Papa?
Is this how children are made?
Oh god, can you imagine if that's how Jack's Up children were made for like a really long time? Some lady's like, I'm having a baby, and it's just like the next couple weeks is Jack staring intently at her shadow. Just waiting.
Gods. Not understanding where the heck actual children come from, just expecting some grown-ass person to just come crawling out of a shadow like fucking the Ring Girls from whatever horror franchise that was.
Oh, The Ring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just creepy person just crawling out of a well on a VCR recording.
You know, one thing I kind of regret we never did with Jack and Calvin?
Oh boy.
The two of them complaining about something they both agree on, but is like time period relevant. Like Calvin just being like, man, remember when they used to put cocaine in Coca-Cola? Like, why can't we go back to that?
It's like, yeah, used to drink it all the time, and just no. They changed the recipe, and it just doesn't hit the same.
And you wouldn't believe it, it's not the first time they've done it.
Just
yeah.
gods, that would have been great to have.
That would have been like, I forgot like who you had your respite with, but that would have been like a really fun respite to do. Of just Calvin and Jack shooting the shit, talking about like, man, that like 1910 was like so much shittier than 1900. Am I right?
Just like, oh, I don't know. I think I was in like what, Normandy at that time.
I don't know how to respond to that because I don't know what Normandy in the early in like 20th century was like, but
I don't even know right now. That was just the first thing that came to my mind, and I think I was thinking more of World War II at the time, rather than 1920s for some reason. There, I don't know.
oh my god,
A
like
lot of
I was thinking
a
of
lot
World
of
War
fun
II.
historical shit.
I was thinking of World War II, which is, but like I was not thinking of World War One.
Yeah. Uh, uh, just because of how long of a life we've given Jack, just opens up so many doors for just fun places that he's been just doing his little miracle killing stuff that he was doing before, just not knowing anything about it there.
Yeah, no, Jack would have been alive during Prohibition.
Oh, the irony there. Oh, the irony.
Someone, someone's like, "What's your name?" And Jack's like, Jack last name. Sorry, this joke only works if his last name was Daniels, but he just goes Jack Daniels, and you just see a cop slowly turn his head.
Uh,
It's like in 1927 Savannah just being like, "Hey, Jack Daniels," and then you just see a cop just quickly turn like, "Huh?"
Speaking of that, I think I finally remember what the actual last name that I had for him during the campaign was,
Ooh, what is it?
because the like during Revelations Nevada, I believe if I remember correctly from what I said in one of the episodes, it was Jack Luthorn.
Mhm.
Although I also remember in one of the episodes stating that he periodically changed his name because someone living from 1875 to the modern day, probably we don't have 125-year-olds living at that time. So he'd have had to have changed his name once, and I wouldn't have been surprised if one of his earlier iterations was just going off the gag from the first episode anyways, of just holding a bottle of Jack Daniels there, of just his name was Jack Daniels.
That's the name that he picked in like 1920 after he decided that he needed a like new alias, and it's been a nightmare for him for like the next like 10 years after that. Also, I did look it up. That joke could work. Jack Daniel's Distillery was founded in 1866, so theoretically, Jack Daniels is older than Jack himself.
Oh gods.
um,
Just so many fun missed opportunities there.
yeah, but I mean, like, it's really fun now.
Oh gods, yeah.
We could like, I mean, like, not even if we're not doing Revelations Nevada anymore, like, we could still shoot the shit of like what our characters would do in certain situations. I mean, like, maybe someday in the future, if I'm like really feeling it, and like, I would love to do a RevNav reboot with the original group. Um, I'm not gonna. I don't want to make that as like a promise of like it's something I'm totally gonna do. But if I'm ever like really feeling it, then that might be something I'll think about and revisit with you guys.
Listen here, internet. Daryl said it once. It's a promise now. It's gonna happen
No,
sometime in the
no,
future.
don't say that.
uh,
No, I can't. I can't keep promising projects and not doing what I'll say I do. Oh God, that's a commitment.
it's fine. It's fine. You're fine there.
Um,
Again, this is all theoretical of if we even do this sometime in the future. I would love to do it. I will say that right now. I would love to do either a reboot of the campaign and record it there with our updated audio recording techniques here, or I should say, your updated audio recording techniques now compared to when we first started there, just having that bit of fun there. And also, I believe that if we were to do it in the future, we could definitely have the characters more fleshed out. Maybe I could actually work on some sort of deeper. I don't even know where I was going with that voice there. Deeper
Not gonna
voice
lie,
with the South bit there.
not gonna lie. If you had put that voice and as Jack's voice, I would have asked you to change it.
Just ow no.
gotta give him, you gotta give him like a deeper, grittier country voice than that. Pard.
Just yeah.
Throw in more cowboy slang there. But yeah, no, that's like a very big like if I'm really feeling it kind of thing. I did have like another like here's the thing is I do have ideas that could make D&D games, but like I said it like 20 million times. I don't want to be a DM right now.
Again, 20 million times. This interview specifically. Count them up.
I think I've said that more
No DM right
times
now.
in this one than I have in like all the other ones I've recorded.
Again, as a fellow DM here, I understand the struggle. I am also on the other end of the spectrum here of, again, as I stated earlier, wanting to run games but trying to find the time or make the time is difficult.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day we'll see. This is a we'll see.
We'll
Maybe
see.
it'll happen. Maybe it'll never happen. But like even so, even if it doesn't happen, like we still got this game, and I like the fact that we recorded it too because it's something that we could like always look back on.
Oh yeah, definitely. Look
Yeah,
back if we need to do it academically, take notes of where we struggled and find improvements there. And also just laugh at the good times that we had.
exactly. Anyway, I think that might be just about it, unless there was anything about like Jack's story that we haven't exactly covered that you wanted to talk about.
Can't really think of too much without just spoiling my stories that I'm already working or trying to find time to work on more already.
Well,
Don't know whether or not I'll actually post them or when that'll be, but hey, look. If all of a sudden there's a Jack Luthorn story somewhere, possibly me, unless somebody there wrote fan fiction before I could get to it.
I never actually checked on AO3 if anybody's ever wrote fan fiction.
Quick, somebody do it now.
If you write Revelations Nevada fan fiction, can you please tell me? I would absolutely read it. And I would
Same
send it.
here.
Hold on, I have AO3 open up right now. Let's see. Okay, hold on a second. Why is just because it has the word Revelations in it does not mean okay. So 3 options have came up, but none of them are for Revelations Nevada. One of them is for Criminal Minds.
Oh, God.
One of them is for the. One of them is for what the fuck is this about? The Carry On series. Okay. And another one is for Ghost, the Swedish band specifically. Okay.
And here I was waiting for the buddy cop saga of Richard and Drake somehow getting off the ground there.
Well, hopefully, maybe someday we will have the buddy cop Richard Jack situation that we were always meant to have, or at least the buddy cop the buddy cop situation before Richard stops being a cop, because that was a thing that was going to happen.
Oh God, yeah. And then we'd have to see later on, does he rejoin a different force, or is he just screwed when
Yeah.
it comes to the justice system there?
We did talk about Richard's direction for his story, at least, because that was something like Richard not being a cop anymore was something that me and John discussed midway through the arc we left off on. That was originally the plan for the arc was Richard gets fired from being a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it still would have been funny to have just like buddy cop like I'm thinking like for some reason I'm thinking of like 21 Jump Street.
Gods, that would be great, especially with Jack's just weird bit of, or at least weird that I ended up going with here, of being able to transform into so many different animals. Like his propensity of just turning into a gecko and then just hiding in someone's collar.
I
There,
forgot he could
alone.
do that. It is awesome. I completely forgot that he could shapeshift. Now that's my question: is if Jack was a character in D&D, would he be a druid, or would he be a gunslinger?
I'd probably try and personally, if I were going to build Jack as a character, I'd try and find a way to do both.
I think you could for a
It would
multi-class.
definitely not be any form of like min-max build and go completely for flavor there of, hey, look, we have this druid gunslinger going on.
Here is my personal theory about that is for Jack is that he is mostly a druid, but he's got like a level or two in fighter. He tries to convince everybody he's a gunslinger, but he's more druid than gunslinger. they're like, he's like, yeah, no, I shoot people, I shoot guns, I kill people with guns, and your party's just like, that's great. Why do you keep turning into a lizard? Every fight, it's just lizards. We told you to take out that one guy, you turned into a hawk. You just got at him like that. The hawk is more efficient, and so are the guns.
Watch it be that we're both wrong, and it's just that Jack is full druid, but somehow has like some form of gun or crossbow training or something like that for a D&D game.
There's so I don't know if you've listened to the newest season of The Adventure Zone, but the newest season is called Taz versus Dracula, and it's very much a like a dark gothic. I mean, obviously it's a comedy, but it's like a dark gothic world where like Dracula reigns supreme, and the main character's like main goal is to kill Dracula. And at one point there's like a lot of the characters in it are like characters from like public domain novels. Like they had like a live show where they just recreated Moby Dick, but with Steamboat Willie. and
as expected from the Adventure Zone there.
And in one episode, they meet the creature from the Black Lagoon, but he has a wife who's like at first appearances it's just a basketball, but it turns out that she's something called a sports druid. And she's just like a normal regular person, but she could turn into sports gear. And she's like, I'm the only druid in my circle, which is the circle of sports.
Gods, I'm just shaking my head at that. Like, I should have expected it from the Adventure Zone, but at the same time, holy freaking, just...
It was really funny. But I'm just, like, imagining that, but with Drake with guns.
Yeah. Yes, Jack with guns here.
I said Drake, I meant Jack.
I didn't realize I was now playing Drake Gibbs now.
I meant Jack, which is actually really funny because I think canonically Drake does own like an an AR-15 or something like that. He owns some fancy like assault rifle.
Uh, something a little bit more than just Jack's Berettas there. Gods, I forgot how much of a Black Lagoon kick I was on when building Jack 2.
Man, we could have had Lake Monster Jack.
Oh god.
I don't know how the family would have thought Lake Monster would have helped them find abstinence better, but I mean, they also thought that making a monster that teaches everybody to become cannibals was a good idea, so who knows.
Self-sufficiency in the potentially worst case scenario of some sort of apocalyptic scenario.
I mean, truth be told, when I was thinking of like the reasons why the family did this, I always thought of it as like children playing with an anthill.
Yeah,
which is
kind
just
of the
like,
vibe that I was getting there.
yeah, that's like very much like the whole vibe I was like trying to go for with them. Just like oh, they had their fun and then they just fucking demolish it afterwards.
So rude.
Yeah, I mean they're not supposed to be good people.
Mm-hmm. So rude, I say, as I'm one of the ants here, just looking up, being like, "Dang, that was my home."
So, if people wanted to, find you anywhere online and like follow you for like, especially since you want to do like a Jack story, where can they do that? Or like, you said you didn't really use social media, but like, where would they be able to do that?
Uh, Still trying to consider that. Most likely, I'll be going under some version of username like Drago, spelled Draigoe, because that's just what I go with a lot of times there.
It's a good
Just
name.
as one of my alii there that I like
Yeah.
going with.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
whole story behind that, but not for this little chat here. Maybe another time if we get more fireside chats or something like that.
Oh god, start
Interviews or
another
something like that.
podcast.
Just another podcast of just interviewing D&D players and having fun chats about characters they played. Oh god, that would be fun.
That would be fun. Oh my god. You can't convince me to do a podcast after we're in the middle of talking about Ending One. Honestly,
Aha! Secret plot revealed and apparently in full swing already.
coming in August of 22,000. Honestly, that does sound like a fun idea, though.
Watch as somebody else probably has already done it, but hey,
Honestly,
we'd probably have more fun with it.
yeah, ours is gonna be better. I'm kidding. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will also keep you up to date on when the heck I have Painful Walks in the Rain worked through.
Yeah, I definitely will definitely like make like at least a short about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely gotta let me know because I want to read it. Yeah.
I'll keep you updated on that.
Woo.
Hey guys, it's your DM here. I am, as y'all know, I'm Daryl or Hawkverse, and I was the GM for Revelations Nevada. I played all the NPCs. I had a sort of pseudo GMPC called Calvin, who was a eldritch being posing as a priest or a nun, depending on their mood. And I'm here to do my own little solo intro. So, the funny thing about us starting the show is none of us were, I would say none of us were expecting something like COVID-19 to have happened. which was the original starting point for when the show had to officially end eventually. So to go into it, so let's start at like the beginning. So I had the idea for Revelations Nevada late 2019, and we were all dying to get back into a D&D game after our last one had ended unfinished, unfortunately, which as most D&D games tend to go sometimes. It was unfortunate, but we were itching to go back into playing Dungeons and Dragons. Didn't really have a game idea, and I was slowly thinking of this one character who ended up being Calvin for like a Monster of the Week game that if I ever got to be a player, I would have loved to have played as Calvin. And then I was like, what if I make like, a game for this character instead, and they just exist as an NPC in this world? And that's how Calvin was born, and the original idea for Revelations Nevada was born. And after bouncing back and forth with my friends of ideas for the setting, we were like, hey, let's do a Monster of the Week game instead, because we listen to the Adventure Zone, we listen to Amnesty, so we could easily do a Monster of the Week game. And then we were like, what if we recorded as an actual play? So me and my friend Joe, we made that original trailer of Revelations Nevada, stuck that into the YouTube, and we're like, we're making this actual play. And we decided to stream our episodes on TikTok on Joe's account, and then I would tidy up the audio, and because I was recording the audio on my end, and everybody would get to hear the episodes like the week that we would start our next session. That was when the episodes would come out. And I was very new to audio editing. I didn't know anything about it at the time. I had just graduated from the community college I was going to, not the year prior, but the fall of 2018. So I didn't really have anything going on. My main goals were trying to get back to school, but it involved me getting a driver's license and getting a car. It's a very long story, but the rundown was I had nothing going on for 2020, and before the pandemic happened, I was like, I'm just gonna go get my life straight, but hey, while I'm doing that, why don't we do this big D&D game? And it was a lot of fun, but definitely would have changed some stuff, at least in just like the setup wise. For one thing, we, at the time of us first doing the first couple episodes, we were recording in John's basement, and his lights were loud, which is, I believe that noise in the back was either my laptop or his laptop, and also the lights in his basement. That's why there's this like buzzing noise in there. We were also using a Blue Yeti microphone, which I know isn't the best microphone, but I mean, it's also not much different from the one I'm currently using. In case you couldn't tell from like my voice quality between my interviews with my players and me now, the ones I was using on my players, that mic was from my headphones, but the one I'm using for recording these audio bits that are by myself and for my usual videos most of the time, I record that on my Samsung. So the mic quality is a lot worse. It's because it's through my headphones versus my other regular recordings, which is through my Samsung satellite microphone. Not a great microphone brand, but it's a pretty inexpensive one that works. It does the job I need it to do for what I do. And I mean, eventually when I get my own place and a better PC setup that's not me recording on my laptop, eventually I'll invest into something that's better, but it's not really a priority at the moment. So we'll know when we get there. But overall with this like game, I'm happy with it for being the first thing I ever DM'd. It was a lot of fun, especially since I did it with people who I'm friends with, rather than with making my very first D&D game I ever did with strangers. I don't think this game would have gone as fun as it has gone when we were, if I did it with people I didn't know versus doing it with friends, because that was so my later college years into now has been really weird for me in a way that I actually do want to make a video about, so I'm not going to get too detailed into it, but I have a very weird relationship with writing things, specifically writing original things. And it's not like me being like, oh, I can't come up with good ideas. I can't, like, everything I have to make has to be based off of something. I need, like, something that's already created to work off of. It's less of that and more of the actual doing something and putting it out there, which I'm sure is a lot of people have to do. Like, it's a thing that a lot of people have to deal with. But mine is from some stuff very specifically in my past that has made it weird, and this was like one of the very first things about it, because I've like, even like years and years before Revelations Nevada was even a thought in my head, I had like my own original projects and stuff that never went anywhere, that I would pitch to Joe, and I would be like, this is a thing I'm making, here are my ideas for it, and he would listen to me ramble about that and give me suggestions or tell me like the direction that like I should go if I'm having trouble with something or whatnot. So this was a first for me in one, like having to perform in front of people and also having to come up with story stuff, improvising right off the bat, and just making something that not only like will entertain people who are listening, but also entertaining people who are actively in the story and playing in the story as it's happening. Because I have never done that before outside of being a D&D player in like one game. The only D&D game I ever was in. And it was just like a lot of fun with that. There's some stuff in Revelations Nevada, now that it's been like years and I like thought more about it, I definitely would have changed. The biggest thing being, like, I would have never, like, just so much child killing. So many kids die in the beginning of Revelations Nevada. And, like, it was something I was thinking of in, like, the second arc. I was like, why are so many kids getting killed in this? Which is, like, it's like, it's not even, like, a thing of me having anything against children. It's just for some reason, I'm like, somebody needs to die. Okay, let's kill a child. And I think if I were to go back and, like, redo anything of Revelations Nevada, that's, like, the biggest thing I would do. That and also getting rid of Rupert. I probably would have replaced him with something else. But I made Rupert specifically a character that the players were supposed to hate enough to want to kill. I wanted a fight instigated without just, like, being like, and suddenly this guy out of nowhere just starts killing and massacring the people at this bar, and you guys get into a big fight. Like, I specifically wanted the fight to be instigated by the players because of just how, like, much of a piece of shit this guy is. So there you go. And I just didn't really, I don't think I really thought much with that, but, you know, I mean, they killed him in the end, and that was the goal with this character, so, I mean, it did the job. It did the job. But I definitely, like, me being me now versus, like, me in 2020, I would have done that. But, like, yeah, there's some stuff in the story that I wish we got to. It was a lot of fun. I liked coming up with this universe of just, like, the Eldritch gods being, like, just kids playing with ants, as I have described it before. And just thinking about, like, a divinity that doesn't really consider itself divinity, but knows it's, like, greater than, like, the beings that are technically under it. It's a very mixed bag of just that. It's, like, I don't know. I don't think I understand, like, in the way of power, it's, like, people should worship me. People should kiss the ground I walk on, but I also kind of intrigued by powerful beings who really just don't fucking care whether or not, like, people, like, look up to them or not, and they're just like, okay, well, you're not immortal and you can't fly and shoot fire from your eyeballs, so does your opinion really matter? And that was, like, some of the vibe I was trying to get with these characters. There's some stuff with the characters I wish I got to do more. I would have liked to do more with Avi. I also, like, would like to have done some more stuff with some of the other NPCs. We were about to get more with Mercedes, which would have been really fun to explore for other characters' stories, as we talked about. But never really got to it. I know when I was doing Jason's interview thing, I mentioned doing a RevNav reboot. I kind of want to clarify a bit on that, because I was thinking about it. I actually am recording this the day after I had that interview with him. And I wouldn't redo the exact story of Revelations Nevada. Rather, I probably would come up with a less, like, Earth going to get destroyed by everything and everyone dying kind of story, lower the stakes and make it something that's probably not as like high stakes as it was before. I kind of wish I didn't go with that route, but I also was really into the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse theme I was going with, and the appropriating Christianity bit. So, yeah, that was like one of the things also with Calvin that I wish I got to, is very much just Calvin technically is not Christian. Calvin just likes the aesthetic of Christianity. I literally joke with it with my friends of just calling it appropriating Christianity. Unfortunately, a lot of my characters who are religious, specifically Christian, end up being Catholic, and that's less so of just me being like, I like Catholicism, and more so of just like, my family is Catholic, so that's like the sect of Christianity that I'm most familiar with, which is kind of that. And especially like back when I was doing Revelations Nevada, like I wasn't even thinking of the fact that there were other sects of Christianity. So yeah, but I enjoyed working on the show with my friends, and just doing a fun game with my friends. And as for like D&D stuff that I hope to do in the future, I did mention in Jason's interview about doing another actual play. I would like to do another actual play. I would like to do another recorded actual play for this channel with friends and with people I like playing D&D with, or people who I think would be fun playing D&D with. Just not anytime soon. This is like, because, okay, so currently, if you want to know, like, what the, like, basic, like, point of my life is at the moment, I am in my last year of college. I am trying to get my BFA. I am trying to get a job with my degree, or something stable enough that I can live, and with my BFA, preferably a career that involves my BFA. And I would like to be able to be, like, financially stable enough to have a place to live, have, like, a better setup, have a better recording area, and have the time and motivation and discipline to go and make a brand new game. Like, that is kind of, like, mentally at the place where I'm at. So me, as part of me doing my own actual play as the DM, at the moment, no. That's not going to happen for quite a while. As for, like, being a player in other games, like, I would love to be a player in other games. I mentioned it before earlier. I just don't want to have to be the one writing the story. I don't mind, like, having to sit with the DM and pitch ideas for characters and talking with that. But I don't have the time or energy to come up with another story and then have to, like, write it with my other players at the moment. I being a player and doing that with just my own character is a lot more manageable, in my opinion. It's probably not the same for everybody else. So, like, in terms of, like, being able to join in games, I would love to be in D&D games more. I don't get to be a player enough. Most of the D&D games that I've been the DM for them. And I want to play in D&D games again so bad, but I can't. I don't have anybody who will invite me to a game. So maybe, like, someday in the future, hopefully I could, like, get into something, but I also don't know, because it very much is just very dependent on whether or not I get invited into a game, and whether or not I can, like, get to play a game. But yeah, like, I'm down. If I was to do DMing something anyway, it'd probably be something that happens once a month, just because, like I said, time, motivation, energy. I got so many webcomics and stuff. So yeah. I do also want to mention thank you to all the people who have listened to the show and have enjoyed us, and also have asked about us doing some kind of video wrapping up the story of Revelations Nevada. I very much appreciate you guys being fans of the show and motivating us to finally, like, put out something official that says this is the end of this thing we did. And it was a lot of fun for the time that we were able to do it. I'm sad that we didn't get to finish it, but it is kind of a necessary considering the path that our lives have taken since we first started the show. And maybe someday I could do something else, but at the moment, like, I want to be a player. I want to be a player, and I have too much stuff going on, and we're all so busy, and it's like I could either just like leave this to die and everybody being like, well, what happened to it, or I could like go and give it one final send up like this video was, which scheduling interviews for this video was a couple months process. If you want to know like how hard it is for any of us to schedule anything, it very much is a huge time management, and I'm also living with my parents, so it's even harder. Anyway, so that's the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for giving Revelations Nevada not only a listen, but watching it until the end. And please go follow my friends and see all the other cool stuff they're doing. I know they got their own cool projects under their belt, and I hope that you guys will give them a follow and keep up with the stuff they're doing. Of course, you can follow me on my social medias. I have everything I have linked down below. But I want to thank you all again for watching, and maybe someday I'll see you guys again behind the DM board. Bye!